Okay, hey everybody. I hope you can see me. I think I'm live. Let me double check here. This is my first time doing a YouTube live, so not 100% sure how YouTube works. I usually do Facebook Live, so this is my first YouTube live. So it looks like I am live. So I'm gonna enable chat here so I can see. I think I can see what you guys are saying. But anyways, let me see. I do not see the chat, so I don't know if I'll be able to see if you guys are saying anything. Let me go back to my channel here. Sorry guys, bear with me as I try to figure out what the heck I'm doing. Okay. Alright, so I'm Christy Velasquez from the Stamp Cycle, and I decided to do a YouTube live to show you guys how I made this card the other week. So I posted this card onto the Stampin' Up! Demonstrator Facebook group that we have. This is where we share ideas on how to do workshops and things like that for our customer, but a lot of us will share card ideas. So I really like this card that I did, so I shared it on that Facebook group, and it just blew up. I couldn't believe the amount of comments and likes and loves, and just the outpouring of support I got from this one card. And a lot of people had a lot of questions on how I made this card. So what I thought would be the easiest is to jump on YouTube, show you how I made the card, and then I will, of course, the video will be on my YouTube channel after tonight. But I thought this was easier than, filming the video, editing it, doing the voiceover and all that stuff. So just decided to do a live. So let me see if I can share. This is the card. Hopefully you can see it, that I shared I think it was last week, on the Facebook Live group. And as you can see, it's a watercolor background card using the new Butterfly Gala bundle from the 2019 Stampin' Up! Occasions catalog. And so I'm going to show you how to make this tonight. So let me switch my camera here. All right, so hopefully you guys can see this. So just a quick kind of overview of Stampin' Up! and our catalog. So these are two of our new catalogs that came out beginning January 3rd, I do believe. So this is our Occasions catalog. Some people call it the Spring catalog, and it is full of amazing things. But this is my favorite time of year because it's also celebration time. And what that means is for every $50 of product that you order, and that is $50 not including shipping and handling and tax, you get to pick an item from this catalog for free. And you can order from the Occasions catalog, the annual catalog. It doesn't matter which catalog you order your $50 from, but then you get to pick something out of the celebration catalog. And it's got a lot of great stuff in here: ribbons, stamp sets. There's some beautiful foil paper in here. There's also these wood elements that are great. Probably hard for you to see, but there's just tons of free stuff that you can earn in this celebration catalog. It's also a really awesome time to join Stampin' Up! As a demonstrator, because not only do you get all the free product that you get to pick by joining, but you can also join and get this really cool tote. Not sure how well you can see that, but it is a really, really cool tote. So it's a fantastic time to join Stampin' Up! And I'm more of what they call a hobby demo. I really joined Stampin' Up! To get the discount. And then I've just sort of grown it from there. I do have some customers now, and I've got my YouTube channel. So I've really made it more of a business now than when I originally joined. So you don't have to join Stampin' Up! Because you want to start a business. You can join it as a hobby demo just to get the discount, and that's really what I started out when I joined Stampin' Up! I just did it for the discount, but now I do it to make fun videos and all that good stuff. Okay, so enough about that. So let me show you the card that inspired me. So this card right here that's on page 13 of the Occasions catalog. I'm going to try to get up close. So you can see this card here. This is what inspired the card that I showed you a few minutes ago that I made. I loved the watercolor in the background, and then it has these tiny, tiny little butterflies. You can barely see it. And so this is what I used for my inspiration for my card. And this is what I also love about the catalogs is not only are they full of all the things that I need to buy, but they have all these great ideas that you can use and change it up and make your own card. So that's what I did with this. And we're going to be using tonight the Butterfly Gala suite. So it is a photopolymer stamp set, and then it has a coordinating butterfly punch that actually punches out 2 butterflies at once. And so that's what I use to make my card. So here is the punch. It is, like I said, a dual punch, so it punches out the big butterfly and the small butterfly. And then here is the stamp set. The cool thing about the stamp set is when you stamp the butterflies, they're one stamp. And when you stamp them, the punch perfectly lines up with that stamped butterfly and just punches it out for you. So it makes it super, super easy. I also love all the little greetings in here and the fonts, and I just really like this bundle a lot. Okay, so let's get started with making the card. So the first thing that you're going to need is a piece of, this is the shimmer cardstock. It's probably hard to see in this light, but this is really gorgeous cardstock. It has a very subtle shimmer to it, and when you kind of tilt it in the light, you can see it just shimmery just a little bit, but it's not overpowering, so it's not like a glitter cardstock, but it has just enough kind of shimmer that it really gives a unique touch to your project. The other great thing I love about this cardstock is it is perfect for watercolor techniques. I actually like this cardstock maybe a little better than watercolor paper, believe it or not. I get some really great results watercoloring with this. Now, you can also do this card using watercolor paper, but we're going to use the shimmer paper. So you're going to need just a cup of water. This is, for you to get your inks going. I use paintbrushes for this. You could use your aqua painters, but I have a size 10 paintbrush and then a size 4. And we're going to mostly be using the bigger paintbrush for now. And then how I did my watercolor background is I use the re-inkers. So I have Blushing Bride, what is this? So Saffron, Pear Pizzazz, Balmy Blue, and then Highland Heather. So I really like to use my re-inkers when I watercolor because I can really control the intensity of the color. So if I want a really intense color, the re-inkers give me that. Now you can use your stamping pads. If you don't have the re-inkers, you can totally do this card with just your pads. You can just squeeze them together like this, and that'll give you ink on the top that you can then take off the top here and use to watercolor. But like I said, I really like to use my re-inkers. And then I always work on this glass mat. This glass mat, unfortunately, is not Stampin' Up, but it's a great tool to have. And all I do is just take the re-inkers and I put them right here on my work surface. So I have, everything right there for me. So I'm going to start with the pink. And I just usually put a couple drops, depending on, what I'm watercoloring. I might use more, I might use less. If you don't have a glass craft mat like this, you can use a piece of laminated cardstock. You can also use, you can get it in art stores. It is like a palette. You can put your inks onto a palette, or I have this piece of plastic that's actually for watercolor. That's plastic that I'll use sometimes too. But now that I've got this craft mat, I use this a lot. And I'm putting my inks down in rainbow order because that's the way I want to color them on my piece of cardstock. All right, so now what you're going to do is we're just going to dip the paintbrush into the water. And you also want to have a paper towel. You want to control the amount of water in your paintbrush because that's going to give you the blending effect between the colors. So sometimes you'll want more water and sometimes you'll want less. For now, we want a pretty good amount of water in there because we're going to do what's called a wet on wet technique for watercolor. So we're going to wet our paper first, and then we're going to bring the wet watercolors to it. You can do what they call just direct to paper, where if I wanted to do that, I would just go right into my ink and then color it onto the paper. But when you do the wet on wet technique, that gives you the blending of the colors and the kind of the edges that you get, and that's really the look that I'm going for. You know what? I just about totally messed up. That is not our next step. Lives are hard, people. Okay, so in the card that I showed you, I did have some butterflies in the background, and that's what we need to do next. So sorry about that. So we're actually going to take our stamp set here, and we're going to emboss some butterflies first. Now you could have just gone straight to the watercolor. It still would have been a beautiful card, but I'm trying to do it exactly like I did for the sample that I showed for those folks that want to make this card just like I did it. So we're going to use the butterfly that looks the most like the monarch butterfly. So it's this one right here. So I've got my, let me get a block. I've got my stamp here. This is photopolymer, so I'm just going to stick it on my block here. Now I only want to do the small butterfly. So you can do two different things. You can cut the small butterfly away from your stamp because you know these are connected. The reason why they're connected is because, as you'll see, it matches up perfect to the punch. You know, you can cut them apart, or you can do what I'm going to do. I don't mind cutting my stamps apart, but because this matches up with the punch so well, I didn't want to cut these. So what I did is instead I just masked off the large butterfly by using just Post-its. These are small Post-its. And I'm just going to come along here and I'm just going to mark, just kind of cover up that large butterfly with these Post-its. And now what's exposed is just the small butterfly. And I'm going to be using my Versamark ink. And before we start stamping, we want to prep our surface. So I'm going to take my embossing buddy. I've had this embossing buddy that I got from Stampin' Up. I bet I've had it over 13 years and it still works perfect. So these things last forever. But what an embossing buddy does is you just kind of pat it. It puts a sheen of powder on your cardstock so that when we go to heat emboss our images, the embossing powder will only stick to what we stamped with the Versamark and won't stick all over the paper. So it's really important that you prime your surface when you do any sort of heat embossing so that you don't get stray embossing powder. Even touching it with your fingers, sometimes the embossing powder will stick there from the oils in your hands. Okay, so now that we've got our surface prepped, let's get to stamping. So I've got my Versamark ink pad. If you're not familiar with Versamark ink, this is a clear, sticky ink. This ink will stay wet for a good period of time, and this allows you to add things like embossing powder to your images, so then you can heat set and do some cool things like that. So we're going to just ink up the butterfly. Before we stamp it down, you'll just take those Post-its off because you don't want to stamp because there is ink on the Post-its. I'm going to start kind of at the top, and I'm going to stamp the butterfly at an angle and kind of off the paper because we want these to look like they're sort of flying around the paper. Now we'll put the Post-it notes back on to mask off the big butterfly that we don't want to stamp. Come here, ink up our stamp again, and we're going to do this just several times. Now, you can't see on camera where I stamped that first butterfly, but I can see it because you can kind of see it through the ink. So if if you're worried about over stamping or not being able to see your image, you can always apply your embossing powder each time in between. I don't feel like I need to do that, so I'm just going to keep on stamping here. So what I'm going to do with this, what I'm doing here with stamping these in Versamark, I'm going to heat set them, and then I'm going to do what they call the ink resist technique using watercolor. So the great thing about embossing images is that things like ink do not stick to your embossed images. So you can you can see the image through like watercolor or ink blending on your paper, and it gives a really cool effect. So I'm just gonna stamp a couple more of these butterflies. This part of the process does take a little long because you have to keep masking, taking the mask off, stamping, but I really like the look that you get of having the butterflies kind of in the background of your watercolor. So I think it's worth it, and it really doesn't take that long. All right, this is the last little butterfly, and then I think we are ready to apply our embossing powder. So I keep my embossing powders in this little tub here. It's just, you'll see I have SU Whites or Stampin' Up! White embossing powder, and I just use just a spoon that I keep on the top with this is just one of those clear, what do you call them? Just cling kind of things that you use to hang stuff on your wall. I just stick that in the top, and that holds my spoon. And this way, I don't spill embossing powder everywhere. I've spilt entire containers of embossing powder on my work surface. And so this way, I can ensure that I don't do that by keeping it in this container. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of sprinkling on the embossing powder to all of the butterflies that was stamped with that Versamark ink. And I'm making sure I get them covered. And that looks pretty good. This butterfly probably needs a little more. Okay. And then you want to just tap off the excess powder. And then I do have some stray embossing powder that's kind of stuck there for some reason. So what I do is I bring in just a cheap, dry paintbrush, and I just flick that away off my paper. Because if you don't remove the excess embossing powder, it will set, and then you'll have these little specks in the background, which could look cool if that's the design you're going for, but I don't want these little extra bits in the background here. So I'm just gonna come along here and remove these. All right. You can kind of tap the back and they'll fall off too. I must have touched this piece of the paper. All right. Now that we've got all the little stray embossing powder off, we're going to heat set it with our heat tool. Key to, heat embossing is to warm your heat tool up for about 30 seconds before you apply it to your paper. This does make noise, so if you have your volume up really high, you might want to go ahead and turn it down. But I'm going to turn my heat tool on. Just joking. Let's see. Why is it not working? There we go. All right, it has to be plugged in for it to work, people. All right, so I'm just going to let it warm up here for 30 minutes. Not 30 minutes, just joking. About 30 seconds. And then I kind of start by just warming the paper up. I move it kind of back and forth over the paper. Just kind of slowly heat up the paper. You don't want to stay in one spot for too long. You can burn your paper. So when I feel like my heat gun's nice and warmed up, I'll kind of bring it in closer to my image and melt that embossing powder. If you've never done embossing like this, heat embossing, it's really cool. It never gets old watching that embossing powder melt. So I'm just going to melt all of the butterflies. And what I usually do after I have embossed is I tilt it in the light and make sure that everything is shiny. I can see right here that I missed a part of that butterfly. And that way, you know, everything's nice and embossed and you won't get any mess ups when you go to watercolor. So let me kind of clean off this surface here. All right, now we can go to what I was talking about before, and that is starting to do our watercolor. So again, you're going to take your paintbrush, get some water on there, and then I'm going to take the water and kind of follow the butterflies that I stamped here. And I want to make it sort of I don't know how to describe it, but kind of like a ribbon effect. So I'm just going to take some water and I'm just going to follow the butterflies going back and forth here and creating kind of like a zigzag. And I'm going to get some nice amount of water in here. You don't want it like super wet, but you want to have enough that the ink is going to flow. So now I'm just going to get a little bit more water, and I'm going to rub my paintbrush like this to get some of the water off. I don't want a ton. You can tape your paper down if you want, but I'm not going to for this. I'm going to pick up some of my ink here, my inker. I'm just going to kind of tap it on the top here where we put, you know, the water. And you're going to see it's going to start to move, and that's okay. You want your colors to blend. So I'm just going to give it a quick wash like that, because I'm going to move into the next color, which is the So Saffron. And I'm going to bring that in here. And I'm going to let these two colors blend a little bit so that they get, maybe they'll make orange, because I did not pick an orange color. So it's not really a true rainbow. And I'm actually going to come back in with the pink here, and I'm going to drop a little bit to try to encourage that orange color. And it is kind of starting to turn orange. So I'm going to wash my paintbrush out again, scrape it along the sides, get a lot of the water out. I'm going to come in here to the green. I'm going to drop that green in. And you want to space out your colors. And you see this green is intense. My paper's already starting to dry, so I'm just going to get a little bit more water, and I'm going to add it. And I don't mind that I have that little blob there. I think it kind of adds some texture. So I'm going to wash that out again. I think my paper's drying, so I'm just going to add a little bit more water. Then I'm going to grab the blue here, drop that in, mix that in with the green to try to get that to blend. And then before I lose all of my space, I'm going to come in here and grab the purple. If you feel like you still have too much water on your paintbrush, you can use this paper towel to dab it off, and that will take some of the water off. Okay, so that is the rainbow watercolor that I did. Let me kind of hold it up and show you guys. Let's give you guys a better look here. So you can see the inks are starting to blend together. And what I like to do is sort of move it around, let the inks kind of blend together. That gives, to me, a more, I just like that look of the crisp edges of the paint. So while that's drying, now you could, if you wanted to speed this up, you could hit this with your heat gun. I personally like the look of watercolor dried naturally. So we do have some more embossing to do, so I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to add just a little bit more blue because I'm losing the blue right here. So I'm going to add a little bit of blue just so we don't lose that color. All right, then we're going to set this aside and let it dry while we're doing the embossing. So I'm going to set that over here. Okay. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to do some more embossing. And the reason why I didn't do all the embossing at the same time was because I wanted to give that watercolor piece we just did a chance to dry on its own. So now I've got a piece of vellum. And again, we're going to prep this with our embossing buddy because we're going to be doing some more heat embossing. But we're going to emboss in gold instead. So I'm going to do this whole piece with the embossing buddy. We're going to use those same butterflies. This is the same stamp that we used to stamp the little one. This time we're going to stamp both butterflies so we don't have to do any masking. All right. I'm just going to ink it up. And because I know I'm going to use the punch, I'm going to try to stamp everything along the edges so that I can just come along with the punch. So we're going to stamp this first one here. Okay. And get up again, and I think I need 3, so I'm just going to do 3 here. Switch my vellum around, stamp it again. Okay, and then this time we're going to use gold embossing powder instead of white. And again, I keep it in these little Tupperware things. I keep the ones I use all the time in these, like gold, white, silver, clear. I keep those in these tubs. I think it makes my life easier. So, all right, so we're just going to apply the embossing powder here. Making sure to get nice coverage. These look so pretty heat embossed. I love these butterflies. Okay. All right, I think I've got them covered. Let me get a little bit more on this one. Tap off the excess. All right, and that looks good. So let me get the heat tool again. So again, it's loud if you want to turn down your volume. We're going to set these. Now vellum can burn really easy. So you need to be really careful when you're heat embossing on vellum. So I'm getting it nice and warm. And when I do vellum, I really try to not stay in one place for a long time. I definitely heat the vellum up from the front and the back, because vellum can burn a lot easier than your regular cardstock. And then when I feel like I've got the vellum nice and warm, I'll come in and start heat embossing. I don't know if you guys can see that change. That never gets old, folks. All right. And then the last one. Okay. Oh, aren't they so pretty? Look at that, so shimmery. Love it. All right, so let me clean off this. Okay. So now we'll use our punch, and this is what I love about this bundle. This punch punches these butterflies out perfectly. So you'll just make sure it's nice and cool. You put your cardstock in the punch, line up the butterflies. This vellum does not want to go in here. All right, so my vellum got a little warped, which it'll do that when you kind of heat set it. So it's not wanting to go into the punch. It's really not cooperating at all here. Jeez. What on earth? Okay, there we go. And then you're just going to line it up. I'm telling you, this does not want to be punched. All right, let's do the other side. It's driving me crazy. Jeez. All right, there we go. So you just line it up. And I'm going to have to kind of put it out of frame so I can make sure it's lined up good enough. And my dogs are losing their minds right now. Sorry about that. That's Macho, my puppy. He's very loud. And you'll just punch them out. There goes two. Look how pretty those are. This punch is not liking me tonight. All right, let's see if I can get these other ones punched out here. Sorry about this. Have no idea why my punch is being difficult. All right, get those punched out, and then we've got one more, and this one really did not want to be punched out before. Let's see if I can get it to cooperate. I'm going to try to, I'm really not understanding the problem here. All right, I'm going to get my handy dandy tool pick here. I use this thing for everything. Ah, there we go. It just didn't want to go in there. All right, get this last one punched out. And it's kind of hard to see. My light is not the best at night. Okay, now there we go. We've got all of our butterflies punched out. So we're just going to push those to the side for now. Let's check on our watercolor piece. So it's still a little wet, so I don't want you guys to have to sit here. So I'm going to hit it with the heat tool. Okay. Now, what I also added on my card were ink splatters. I love to add ink splatters. So I'm going to come along here, and this is a smaller paintbrush. This is only a 4 round. And I'm just going to pick up some of this ink, and I'm just going to tap it on my fingers, and I'm going to do kind of the splatters that go with the color. So that was the pink. You can't really see the splatters, but take my word for it. This is the yellow that I'm applying. I'm going to pick up some of that green. And it's okay if, you get a green splatter towards the top. I don't mind if the splatters don't line up perfectly with the colors. I still think it's pretty. All right, and then the last one will be the purple. Okay, so that kind of finishes off all the watercolor. And I love how the splatters kind of add some, you know, detail. I love to add splatters to pretty much most of my cards have splatters. Okay, so let's set that aside, and then we're going to work on the butterfly. So when you punch these out, you'll see that they have these little nodules. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let me bring it close. You see that little kind of rounded edge in between the wings? Now what I did for the original card is I cut that out, but because we're already 30 minutes into this, I'm not going to do that for this card. I'm going to spare you that, and we're just going to glue them onto the card front with those little nodules on there. But if you wanted to clean it up, it really does, I think, add and makes the butterfly look neat, but we're just going to go with it like this. So I'm going to hit this one more time with my heat tool because I did just add those splatters, and I think it's still a little wet. I like to heat the back too to try to flatten it out. And this is another great thing I like about working on this glass is I don't have to worry about using a heat tool on it. It can resist the heat tool. Okay. So, it's still a little, it's a little warped, but that's okay. We'll glue it down. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut out the sentiment, and I'm using the well-said, well-written framelits, and these are fantastic. These are also new in the Occasions catalog, and you get a ton of word dies. We really needed some word dies, in my opinion, for Stampin' Up, so I was really excited to see this set. So I'm going to use the word die Hooray, and my Big Shot is right behind me. So I'm not going to bring it over here. It would be it'd be too much of a hard time. So I'm going to step away here for 2 seconds, and I'm going to run this through my Big Shot. If you're not familiar with the Big Shot, a Big Shot is a die cutting machine. So these are dies. So when you run them through this Big Shot, it's like it has rollers in it, and you run it through and the rollers smash the paper and the die, and they end up cutting it out. So this is some of our gold glimmer paper, and you see that die cut out the Hooray. Super cute, huh? So that's fun. Now, what I also did kind of off camera before I started the video is I also cut out an additional die cuts, 3 of those of this Hooray die, if I can get this thing. I also cut out 3 out of white, and I glued them together, stacked them up. So that kind of gives you like that chipboard effect. So now we're just going to adhere this gold one onto the white die cuts that I did. You want to get out all the little pieces. This is where your tool comes in handy. You just kind of pop all those out. And then I'm going to use some of this Tombow. This is the multi-medium matte glue. This glue is really strong, but I love that it just kind of is perfect for putting together die cuts like this, because it dries completely matte. So if you're messy, kind of like I am, I'm just squeezing out, you know, lines of this glue and not really worrying about if it's going to be too much. You don't have to worry about it with that glue because it dries matte and you can't see it. So I'm just going to stack this on top of the white die cut. This will also help this die cut kind of stand out from the background with all that watercolor and the butterflies. You don't want to lose your sentiment. So by stacking it on those additional white die cuts, it kind of gives you like a chipboard type greeting, and it really does stand out. So it's pretty thick. I don't know if you can see, but I stacked 3 white die cuts behind it, so it's got some weight to it. All right, so let's put this card together. Again, I'm going to use some of this multi-medium matte glue that I just used for that Hooray. And I'm going to, I'm just going to kind of arrange everything so I know where I want to glue stuff. So I'm going to bend my butterflies a little bit and start arranging those. I'm going to do a couple big ones and some small ones. And see, I love that you can see the water, you know, the embossed butterflies in the background, and then you have the watercolor on top. I just think that's really pretty. And I'm just gonna kind of catty corner the butterflies going, you know, in different directions. So I think maybe maybe I'll add this one right here at the bottom. Okay. So I think that's good. So now I'm going to come in here and glue them on. So what I did is I just applied glue. I kind of bent them in the center. And then I just applied the glue right down the middle. And we'll just add that to the card. This video is definitely longer than I thought it would be. So thanks guys for hanging in there with me. I'm not going to glue the sentiment down just yet. I'm going to get these butterflies down, and then I'll just tuck that sentiment in around the butterflies. Okay, one more and we're set. Okay. Now we'll do the sentiment. I'm just going to add a bunch of this glue onto the back here to hold it on. Hopefully I'm not off camera. Okay. I think I'll just put that right like that. I'm going to push down on it so it'll stick. Before I did set a clear block on it, but we really don't have time for that. All right, and then the last thing we're going to do is put the final touches to the card together. So I have this is a top folding A2 card base. This is made out of the thick Whisper white cardstock that we have. It's just half a sheet of the 8.5 by 11 cardstock just folded in half. I like to use the thick Whisper white for my card bases because it gives the cards some weight and they stand up really, really nicely. So I meant to mention that this is a standard card size panel that we watercolored on. So this is 4 1/4 by 5.5, which is the same as this folded card. So I'm just going to take some of our Tombow multi-purpose glue. I'm going to apply a generous amount on the back. The thing about this glue is it does give you a little bit of working time that you can wiggle it around on the front of your card to make sure you get perfect placement. So when I'm doing a card front like this that is, you know, the entire size of my card, the way I do it is I first line it up to one edge. So I'll line it up, kind of stack the card like that and line it up from that edge. Then I'll tip it up and push it from the top. And that usually will line it up pretty well. I might have made my card base or this piece of paper kind of wonky. And then just really push down to make sure that paper adheres to the front, and that'll help get rid of some of the warping. Now if you're worried about it being too warped, you can like put a book on this overnight and then come and fluff your butterflies up, and that'll help kind of straighten it out. It's a little warped, but I still think it's pretty. And then that is the card. So here it is. Hopefully you can see it. It is got all that beautiful rainbow watercolor. I love the gold glimmer paper that really goes with the gold embossed butterflies. And I really like the added texture and interest that doing the splatters along with the watercolor gives you. So this really wasn't that hard of a card. So I say give it a try. So hope you guys kind of learned how to make it. And let me switch over here. I appreciate you guys joining me tonight. If you haven't done so already, if you go down below this, if you'll hit that subscribe button, and there's also a little bell, ting, right beside that, subscribe. That will give you a notification when I load a new video or I go live like this again. I do have another video that I need to edit and post coming soon, and I'll give you guys a sneak peek just because you joined me. It's going to be featuring this card here. Let me show you. This is a adorable little, well, I hate to say adorable because it's a sympathy card for when you lose a pet, but I have a video that I'll be loading how to make that card coming soon. So if you haven't subscribed, you'll want to. So thank you guys for joining me tonight. Sorry this video was a little longer than I expected, but hopefully you learned how to make the card, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye!